So the New York Jets signed Breshad Perriman to a 1 year, $6.5 million contract, and I'm a little bit on the fence about it, but I'm gonna say that I like it. I don't think that it's like an amazing deal, but I think it's pretty good. I would say that it's a good deal. I believe there's also another like million and a half in potential incentives, but either way, still a very good, solid signing, I think. And the reason why I like it is because I do think he has the upside. I think his talent is there. He's actually one of the best, just pure talent guys in the NFL. But as we all know, from a wide receiver's perspective, route running is the most important thing, and he's not the best at that. Quite frankly, I don't know if every team in the league should have offered him this contract, but I think for the Jets, who desperately need receiver help, this can be good, and he could potentially be a solid number two for them if they get a number one through the draft, which I'm assuming is the plan. But anyways, let's talk about Perriman, and one of the things that I do like about him is just his natural talent. You see a play like this, he's actually going down to the bottom half of the screen, and since the Seattle defender is following him, this gives them a pretty good idea that it is going to be man coverage, and that is what it's going to be. As you see, it's a cover one blitz, and this is perfect for Tampa. They have the best kind of play to try to beat this. I mean, it's a perfect play, actually a very fun play. What they're going to do is they're going to set up as though it's going to be a screen, where Perriman would run over, and he would block a defensive back along with Mike Evans. Chris Godwin runs back, he catches the ball, and then is able to run, and you guys know how a screen works. We got it. And so, that makes a lot of sense, but this is actually a fake. And then what Perriman is going to do is actually just run deep. It's a really fun play, I think, and it makes a lot of sense, especially when you think about it from Perriman's skill set. This is using him to his advantage, and even though you have Mike Evans and Chris Godwin right there, Tampa Bay is saying that they think Perriman is the guy to run this play with. And so as you see right when the ball is snapped, Perriman is looking like he's running over to potentially block, and this gets the assigned man to kind of run a little bit further in because, I mean, he's saying, well, wait a second, if I'm just running over here to make sure I'm covering someone who's just trying to block somebody else, this could be a bad situation. Chris Godwin could have all day to try to run over and make a play, so I have to run in and make sure that I'm in position to make a play. But the second he does that, Perriman was able to run over, he gets wide open, Winston hits him, and they gain a solid gain just like that because Perriman has that breakout speed. I mean, he has great speed, and that gives him a massive advantage on some of these plays, especially if he can sort of catch you off guard. When he runs a good route, I mean, he gets open every time. The problem is he doesn't always run a good route, but when he does, he consistently gets open. I'm going to show two plays. Both of these are going to not necessarily be great routes. However, one of them is going to work, one of them isn't. This is the one that's going to work. It's a cover one man play. That's going to be Perriman's route, which is a pretty good route against this type of coverage. I mean, it cuts, it gets to the outside where there's nobody else to help out, and he could potentially get open, and especially because, his defensive back is far enough back because he's aware of a potential deep pass that he is going to stay deep, which could allow this play to really work out. One thing that I don't love about this from Perriman is that you look right after the ball is snapped, and he clearly moves closer to the sideline instantly. He's clearly moving in that direction, and sometimes you could potentially see a receiver maybe do this to try to fool a defensive back, but that's not what Perriman's doing here, because this is the route that he's running, and it's not like he's setting something up later in the play. This is just him sort of naturally creeping over to try to give himself a better advantage. Now, granted, it still works out. He's fast enough that he was able to still get to his spot quicker than his assigned man, but at the same time, I do have to think that if he was going up against maybe a more aware corner who was able to more quickly realize what was going on, I mean, that's how pick sixes happen if you're not careful, or just, in a not as extreme sense, that could allow somebody to run over and make a play. Especially, I mean, it helps that he's really quick, but if his assigned man was playing a little bit closer, he would have had less room to cover, and maybe if he notices that, he does run over and make the play. Although, again, also a good example of showing that Perriman has speed, and that does help. This next play will be the last play I show from the Seattle game. What's going to happen is that essentially the same thing. This time it's a blitz, so they're sending 5 instead of 4, but other than that, basically the exact same play. Although the one difference this time is it's going to be a little bit further down the field, and the assigned corner isn't playing as far deep. So now, at this point, when Perriman is about to cut, you notice it's a lot closer. This is not as dramatic as the last one was. And so what can you do here? Well, you could do several things. You could try to just, make a little move here, fake as though you're going to the middle of the field, then cut to the sideline. You could just try to cut a little bit earlier. You could do something like that, or you could continue running your route. But when you do that, you have to make sure that you cut immediately, and you have to make sure you cut very well. You have to do something here because you're not going to get open just because of speed at this point. That's been taken out due to the good positioning by Perriman's assigned man. However, this cut is just very slow, and that allows a defensive back to knock the ball away. There was not a ton of separation on that play, and if he cut a little bit better, that probably would have been a completion. And I think that that's kind of where I would put Perriman. Is, he's a guy who can get open sometimes. He's not somebody that on a 4th down and 7, when you need a 1st down, you're looking to him. He just isn't. He's somebody that on a 1st down and 10, maybe you'll look to him. Not in these situations. That's why he's not a number 1 receiver, even though he actually did play a number 1 receiver and played it decently well for a couple of weeks with Tampa Bay. In fact, through his first 9 games, which was through the first 12 weeks of the season because he didn't play every game, his career high in receiving yards was just 44 yards, so not too much. But towards the last 5 games of the season, he really played a lot better. Part of it was, at a certain point in the Detroit Lions game, he all of a sudden got thrust into the wide receiver number 1 role when both Chris Godwin and Mike Evans went down. But at the same time, once he got thrust in there, he finished with 100 yards in each of those last 3 games, having a career-high 134 yards in his last game with Atlanta. Prior to those last 3 games, he had never had over 100 yards in a game in his entire career, so maybe it seems a little bit questionable to go after a guy who had never had 100-plus yards in a game in his entire career up until 3 weeks left in the season. It's maybe even a little bit more questionable considering the fact that this guy didn't even have 300 yards on the season through 14 weeks of the season. It took him till his last 3 games of the season just to pass 300 yards, but at the same time, he definitely showed flashes, and I think that, Perriman at his best is a good player and definitely a solid number 2 guy. Perriman at his worst, not so much. Tampa Bay fans will tell you they wanted him cut at a certain point because he was not producing early on in the season. But later on, I thought he played pretty well. Like a play like this, it's going to be cover 4 zone, and Perriman just running deep, so very basic, just can he get past him, but after the ball was snapped, notice just how quickly he runs. No move, nothing, just decides to run deep, and look at how much separation he gets. There is definite separation right here. Granted, Winston underthrows this ball, so it is not able to be complete. That one was a tough one for Perriman to find a way to make a catch. Maybe Julio Jones makes that catch, or DeAndre Hopkins. Most people do not make that catch. Perriman didn't. Hard to really blame him on that one. But I also liked how not too much later in this game at all, this play would happen, where same situation, one-on-one matchup, go route down the field, and this time you're going to see the assigned corner try to create some contact. The idea is, hey, you're faster than me, I'm not going to allow you to just burn me deep like that again, but even with the contact, Perriman's easily able to knock it off, and now he's still able to run over and create some separation. Now, it's not as much as last time, so mission accomplished in a sense with the Tennessee player, but Winston this time also now has another opportunity here, and he's going to throw it a little bit deeper than he did in the last one because sometimes it's better to overthrow than underthrow. It ends up being a pretty great throw and a great catch by Perriman, and more often than not, he didn't make those plays, but every now and then he would, and really the last few weeks of the season, he was all of a sudden making those types of catches, which kind of led me to believe that he finally found his groove late in the season. I do believe that, because again, when he really started playing well, it wasn't just when he got thrust into that number 1 role. He had 87 yards in Week 13 against the Jaguars, and 70 yards in Week 14 against the Colts. So is this a match made in heaven where it's going to be a perfect situation? He's going to be a great receiver, get 1,000 yards next year? Probably not. If I'm a betting man, I'm saying no, but I think there's a chance there's value there, and for a 1-year deal, why not take a chance if you're the Jets? You're a team that was not really close to making the playoffs last year. I know you went 7-9. I do think that many people thought that you were worse than you were. At the same time, I still don't think you're quite a playoff team just yet. Maybe if you draft well, you could become that. But I think that adding a guy like this, who could potentially be a guy who could really help them out, I think it makes some sense. At the end of the day, everything in football is a risk, but if this decision doesn't work out, you're not really going to kick yourselves too hard if you're a New York Jets fan. But if this decision does work out and he turns into a number 2 receiver, you basically got him for free, and then all you have to worry about is re-signing him the next season. So for a 1-year deal, not too much of a risk. I like the move. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.